Everyone in the small town of Willow Creek knew Maria Thompson as a quiet woman with tired eyes and a gentle smile. She worked as a cleaner at the local school, leaving home before sunrise and returning after sunset. To most people, she was just another struggling single mother trying to survive. But to her son, Ethan, she was his entire world. Maria's life had never been easy. Her husband, Daniel, had died in a factory accident when Ethan was only 3 years old. Overnight, Maria became both mother and father, carrying grief in her heart while holding her son's tiny hand. There were days when she wanted to break down, but she never did, not in front of Ethan. She believed a mother's tears should never become her child's burden. From the moment Ethan could walk, Maria worked harder than ever. She skipped meals so he could eat. She wore the same faded dress year after year so she could buy him new shoes for school. Every night, no matter how exhausted she was, she sat beside his bed and told him stories. Stories of brave boys who never gave up and mothers whose love could move mountains. Ethan was a bright child, curious and full of dreams. He wanted to become a doctor one day. "I want to help people, Mama," he used to say, his eyes glowing with hope. Maria would smile and stroke his hair, hiding the fear in her heart. She knew how expensive dreams could be, but she also knew that a mother's love had no limits. School years passed, and Ethan grew older. He started noticing things he had been too young to understand before: his mother's cracked hands, her constant back pain, the way she coughed at night. He noticed how she pretended not to be hungry when food was scarce. Guilt slowly crept into his heart. One evening, Ethan came home from school unusually quiet. Maria sensed something was wrong. "What happened, my son?" she asked softly. Ethan hesitated, then said, "My teacher says I can apply for a scholarship in the city, but it's far and expensive." Maria felt a lump in her throat. The city meant opportunity, but also separation. It meant Ethan leaving home, and her being alone. Yet she smiled. "You should apply," she said firmly. "Dreams are meant to be chased." That night, Maria cried silently for hours. Not because she was weak, but because loving someone sometimes meant letting them go. Against all odds, Ethan got the scholarship. The day he left for the city was both the proudest and most painful day of Maria's life. At the bus station, she hugged him tightly. "Remember who you are," she whispered. "And remember, no matter how far you go, my love will always follow you." Life in the city was hard for Ethan. The studies were demanding, and loneliness often crept in. But every time he felt like giving up, he remembered his mother's sacrifices. He studied harder, fueled by her love. Back in Willow Creek, Maria's health began to decline. Years of hard labor and neglecting herself took their toll. Still, she never told Ethan. In her letters, she always wrote, "I'm fine. Focus on your studies." A mother's love, she believed, was about protection, even from the truth. One winter evening, Maria collapsed at work. She was taken to the hospital, where doctors diagnosed her with a serious heart condition. The treatment was expensive, and Maria refused to let anyone inform Ethan. "He must finish his studies," she said weakly. "That is all I want." But fate had other plans. A neighbor called Ethan, and he rushed back home immediately. When he saw his mother lying in the hospital bed, thinner and weaker than he remembered, his heart shattered. "Why didn't you tell me?" he cried, holding her hand. Maria smiled faintly. "Because a mother's job is to worry for her child, not the other way around." Ethan stayed by her side day and night. He sold his belongings, borrowed money, and even worked part-time to support her treatment. For the first time, the roles had reversed. The son was now protecting the mother. Months later, Maria slowly recovered. Ethan returned to the city and completed his studies with outstanding results. Years passed, and he became a successful doctor, just as he had dreamed. He brought his mother to live with him, ensuring she never had to work again. One evening, as Maria sat by the window watching the sunset, she said softly, "I always wondered if all my sacrifices were worth it." Ethan knelt beside her and held her hands, the same hands that had once fed him, clothed him, and comforted him. "They were worth everything," he said. "I am who I am because of you." Maria closed her eyes, a peaceful smile on her face. In that moment, she knew the truth. A mother's love never asks for recognition, never seeks reward. It simply gives, endlessly and unconditionally. And in the heart of every child who is loved that way, that love lives on forever. Life finally slowed down for Maria after years of struggle. The small apartment Ethan bought near the hospital was warm and filled with sunlight. Every morning, Maria watched her son leave for work wearing a white coat, his steps confident, his head held high. Each time the door closed behind him, her eyes filled with tears, not of sadness, but of fulfillment. She often thought back to the nights she had gone to bed hungry, the days she had worked with fever in her body, and the prayers she had whispered in the dark. At the time, she had never imagined this life. All she had known was love, and somehow, it had been enough. Ethan, despite his success, never forgot where he came from. After long hospital shifts, he would rush home just to have dinner with his mother. Sometimes he cooked, sometimes they laughed at his terrible attempts. Those moments meant more to him than awards or praise. One evening, Maria suddenly asked, "Do you ever regret it, Ethan?" "Regret what, Mama?" "Choosing me over an easier life." Ethan looked at her in disbelief. "I didn't choose you," he said softly. "You chose me every day of your life. Loving you is not a sacrifice, it's an honor." Maria's health remained fragile. She grew weaker with time, though her spirit stayed strong. One quiet night, she asked Ethan to sit beside her bed. Her voice was low, almost a whisper. "If one day I'm not here," she said, "promise me you'll live fully. Promise me you won't stop loving people." Ethan held her hand tightly. "You're not going anywhere," he said, though fear trembled in his voice. "But a mother knows." Maria smiled gently. "A mother's love doesn't end with life," she said. "It becomes part of who her child is." A few weeks later, Maria passed away peacefully in her sleep. There was no pain, no struggle, only a calm expression, as if she were finally resting after a lifetime of giving. Ethan was broken. The world felt empty without her quiet presence. But as days passed, he realized something profound. His mother had not left him. She lived in every patient he treated with kindness, every child he encouraged, every sacrifice he made, without expecting anything in return. Years later, Ethan opened a free clinic in Willow Creek, naming it Maria's Hope. On the wall hung a simple quote: "A mother's love creates a future she may never see, but will always live within." And after Maria's passing, silence became Ethan's greatest enemy. The apartment felt too large, too empty. Every corner held a memory. Her shawl folded on the chair, the small plant she watered every morning, the cup of tea she never finished. At night, Ethan often found himself speaking to the quiet room, as if she were still there, listening. Grief changed him, but it did not weaken him. Instead, it reshaped his heart. At the clinic, patients noticed something different about Dr. Ethan Thompson. He listened longer. He spoke softer. He held trembling hands, as if he understood pain beyond medical textbooks. When children cried, he knelt to their level. When poor patients worried about fees, he quietly wrote paid on their files. Many nights, after the clinic closed, Ethan stayed behind, staring at the framed photo of his mother on the wall. "I hope I'm doing this right, Mama," he whispered. One rainy afternoon, a woman arrived at the clinic with her young son. The boy was sick, undernourished, and frightened. The mother looked exhausted, eyes hollow, clothes worn thin. As Ethan examined the child, something tightened in his chest. He had seen this scene before, not as a doctor, but as a child. "You remind me of my mother," he told the woman gently. Tears rolled down her face. "I'm trying," she said. "But sometimes love doesn't feel like enough." Ethan smiled softly. "Love is always enough," he said. "It just needs time." He arranged free treatment for the boy and helped the mother find work through the clinic's support program. As they left, the child waved at him with a shy smile. In that moment, Ethan felt it clearly, his mother's presence, warm and quiet, standing beside him. Years passed. The clinic grew. Volunteers joined. Stories spread. But Ethan remained the same man who carried his mother's lessons in his soul. He never married, though many wondered why. Love, for him, was not something to rush. He had already known the purest form of it. On the anniversary of Maria's death, Ethan visited her grave in Willow Creek. He placed fresh white flowers on the soil and sat quietly. "I used to think your love ended the day you left," he said softly. "Now I know it only changed its shape." The wind rustled the trees, gentle and calm. Ethan stood up with steady breath. He was no longer the little boy holding his mother's hand, but everything good inside him still came from that grip. Because a mother's love does not fade with time. It becomes courage. It becomes kindness. It becomes the strength to love others the way she once loved you. And as long as that love continues, a mother is never truly gone. In that clinic, every act of compassion carried the echo of one woman's endless love. Time has a gentle way of healing, but it never erases love. For Ethan, years passed like quiet pages turning in a book, each page carrying his mother's voice between the lines. The clinic in Willow Creek became more than a place of treatment. It became a refuge. Mothers came holding sick children, just as Maria once had held him. Fathers came with worry etched into their faces. And Ethan welcomed them all with the same patience his mother had shown him when life had nothing to give but hardship. One evening, after a long day, Ethan found an old box while cleaning the apartment. Inside were Maria's letters, unsent, carefully folded. His hands trembled as he opened one. "My dear Ethan, if you are reading this, it means I am no longer there to worry about you. I want you to know that loving you was never a sacrifice. It was my purpose. If my life was hard, it was only because it was shaping yours. Live kindly. Love deeply. That will be enough." Tears blurred his vision, but his heart felt strangely full. That night, Ethan stood before the clinic staff and volunteers. He spoke not as a doctor, but as a son. "This place exists because one woman believed love could change a life," he said. "Let us honor all mothers who give without being seen." From that day on, the clinic began a new program, free care for single mothers and children in need. Ethan named it A Mother's Promise. Years later, on a calm autumn morning, Ethan sat on a bench outside the clinic, watching children laugh and run. The sun warmed his face. For the first time in a long while, he felt complete. He closed his eyes and whispered, "I did my best, Mama." And in that silence he felt it, not as memory, but as truth. A mother's love is not bound by time or space. It does not end with death. It becomes the light that guides a child through darkness. Long after the mother is gone, her love continues. In choices made with kindness, in lives touched with compassion, in futures built from sacrifice. Because a mother's love is eternal, and it always finds its way home.